sun rising to my eyes. Hey, I can't realize, say she don't just me. Na 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 na. Excuse me, lady, can I get to know you? I like you plenty. Excuse me, lady, can I get to know you? I like you plenty. Child, baby, the way you move it right tonight, you make me feel alright, girl. I like your catwalk, piano lay, it is show like catapult, piano lay. I like your catwalk.
Morning everybody, good morning. Welcome to Ama Muses. Hopefully you are familiar with this particular playlist. In this playlist, it's a no holds barred playlist, and it is exactly what it is. Nothing held back. I tend to bring huge topics, big elephants to the table for discussion. Today, I am actually not bringing an elephant, I'm bringing a mammoth. I am bringing something that makes many people uncomfortable. But I think that we ought to be made uncomfortable so that we might learn from this. The lighting is doing funny things to my eyes, but there we go. We'll have to work with it today. It's better for me to have lights doing funny things to my eyes than for you to see a blackened screen. So let's work with it. Okay. So today, the topic is why marriage is dangerous for girls. I know. It's going to have your girl rise. Your bile will rise instantly when you hear that topic, especially those of you who are either married, those of you who are religious, those of you who are pro-marriage in any way, shape, or form are going to find this discussion very difficult. But I'm asking you to take those sentiments and put them to one side, and I'm asking you to listen to the logical argument. Let me tell you the story of a friend of mine. This friend of mine was an only child. So in her home, every handy thing that needed doing, she actually learned how to do. She could dismantle anything, she could make anything, she could do anything. In their home, it was her parents and just her. No, actually, dad was absent most of the time, so it was mom and her. And these two women became very competent together. They could do absolutely anything, nail anything, dismantle anything, put anything together. And then she met a guy. So when she met a guy, she was a professional lawyer at the time, so a professional person, but very skilled technically in doing things about the house. When she met this guy wanted to do this for her, I wanted to do that for her. And when she didn't want it being done, the guy perceived it as not being needed. So obviously, in wanting to communicate to this guy that he was needed, she had to relinquish some of these things to the guy. So the guy did all the handy stuff around the house. The guy put everything together. These are things that she could do. But for years, she never did. And my friend tells me that after a decade or so in this marriage, things were not great. She'd become dependent. Even the basic things that she could do for herself, she needed to scream for the partner. Can you put this together for me? Can you do this for me? Ooh, when she wanted to put a little bit, when her hand had to come to use in any way, she became apprehensive. And she wanted to call on somebody else to do it for her. And this is the friend who actually raised the topic with me. She says, Anna, marriage is dangerous. Marriage is not good for girls. Relationships, long-term relationships are not good for girls because the way they are set up, these skills, even the already skilled girls, like her. And I have to say, once she said that to me, I had to go back and I had to think. There are times when I have to work a piece of equipment that I can work easily. But my first instinct is to call somebody to come help. Help! Because I have been in this relationship too, and because I've also found myself relinquishing some of the skills to another person. Somebody else has always done it. The computer was put together by somebody. So when I need something need that somebody to come have a look at it. Can you do this? Can you do this? It's really forced me to think after having this conversation with this friend of mine. We've really had to think. We've really had to ponder and come to a conclusion. You can't blame anybody, but it's the way the system is set up. The fact that you are with somebody means that you have to come to a partnership. In coming to a partnership, you have to relinquish certain things so that each person in this marriage is beneficial. The thing with men and their ego is that they always want to be the ones who handle the physical. They are physically more capable. They handle those things. Usually they take it from you without even asking. It's just a given that he does it. And you find that you play along. And he becomes more skilled in putting things together, and you become de-skilled in that area. You become more skilled in the cleaning area. You become more skilled in the cooking area. You become more skilled in what is the feminine areas. But that creates deficits for you in other areas. As long as the partnership continues, as long as things go on the way you've established, it's fine. You don't see anything wrong. It is when, unfortunately, like in my friend's case, the relationship got to a point where it no longer was working. My friend was not getting anything out of it. She actually ended up becoming abused in this relationship. And part of what was actually used to abuse her verbally was the very thing that she could do for herself, but has been taken away from her over this decade. You can't do anything for yourself. You say you are a lawyer, very intelligent, but you can't even do a simple thing like put a table together. I could at some point. Don't know what happened. I know I can't now, but I could. I really could. Oh, you are so dependent and you claim to be independent. You can't do this, you can't do that. And then she realized that the taking away of these things, the assumption of this role, was actually done with abuse in mind. It was a way of stripping her of skills, of making her dependent somewhat so that it could be used against her over time. It was a way of finding something to belittle her with. It was a diminishing technique. This person had systematically and had done it over a decade. A decade. Even her car servicing was done by this guy. So for about 5 years, she didn't know who serviced her car. He wouldn't tell her. He took it and he did it and he brought it back. And it was actually convenient, so she let him. She really didn't know much about anything when she thought about it at the end of this relationship. And this was this guy's way of making sure that he was needed in this relationship. It was his way of making sure that there was a gap when he was not present. And that is what makes it abusive in my eyes. It's what makes it abusive in my eyes. It was deliberate. It was conscious. It was systematically done. And this was done so gradually that this very intelligent, very capable, highly educated woman missed the cues altogether. So you see, marriage can be very dangerous to girls. It can lure you into false securities. It can lure you to let certain things go. It allows you to take your eye off things that are actually very important in terms of independence. Marriage can bring you the false security and you let things go. You take your eye off the ball. And when you do that, the funny thing is the minute your eye is off, it comes back to bite. It comes back to bite because you become dependent somewhat. You have become dependent. Take a typical young girl, early 20s, like I was. Could do anything for myself. Paid my rent by myself. Traveled by myself. Went this, did that, went here, all by myself. It was fine. The minute you get married, you realize that the bills have to be shared. I was just talking with a friend of mine recently, Yes, food has gone up a little bit because there's two people eating. But really, kid, why do we really feel that we need to split bills with somebody? When things haven't worked and women have to move on, one of the first things people will cite is rent. Oh my God, I can't do it by myself. But you did it when you were young. You paid for it all on your own. You could do rent. Oh my God, how do I feed myself? I'm not even talking about the ones with kids. I'm talking about the ones who are still solo when they come to the end of the cycle. But all of them are apprehensive about paying rent alone for the first time. They are concerned about bills. I'm like, what bills? Yeah, you know bills. Okay, bills. What bills? Do you still not pay for your phone bill? Yeah. Do you pay for your food? Oh, we split it. Yeah, that's because you have two people to feed. So when you split it, you still pay one person's share. Sort of. Yes. What else is that bill which is so difficult to pay on your own? What else is in your upkeep that is impossible for you to sustain? And when you actually dig and dig and dig, there is no substance to that argument, but it's somehow something a lot of us feel. That even though as younger versions of ourselves, we were self-reliant, that we could do things on our own, we could do things for ourselves, that suddenly we become incompetent in minding our own business, in keeping our house in order. And that is why I say that marriage can be dangerous for girls. Not just the marriage with a certificate, but long-term relationships, long-term cohabiting can be very dangerous for girls if you don't become aware of some of these things. There are women who are conscious of this. There are women who, regardless of being in a partnership, learn to maintain the use of their two hands. There are women who learn to feed themselves, people who are so capable in being part of a partnership that they do know that even if it becomes necessary for them to go solo, they can do it. They certainly can do it. The other one is the companionship you find with somebody. And you become so dependent on this companionship, you begin to think that the minute this person is not there, your life collapses. This is great. This is wonderful for the relationship. But it is disastrous, again, for you, sister, if things were to end. I've known many people who were in loving relationships, was never going to head towards divorce, ever. But that's not the only thing you worry about. The other thing which brings relationship to an end is death, sudden death. It happens. It happens. I have had to deal with sisters who've lost their husbands, and you can't console them. I actually do know one who lost her husband and committed suicide and left 3 children because there was nothing left of herself. She had become one half of the partnership. She had lost all her identity. She couldn't be her without him, and he had just passed suddenly. That all the love and all the concern about her 3 children was not enough to make her want to stay and be her. She chose to end life. She chose to commit suicide because the other partner had gone. Now that is also very dangerous. That is very dangerous, my sister. That's one of the most dangerous things about marriage, actually, when it's very good. Again, lures you into false security, doesn't it? Yeah, the guy loves you so much he will never leave. And you love him so much he will never leave. But you are not the only two who determine the end. You are not. Actually, of all the factors that determine the potential end of your relationship, the two of you are the most insignificant. Sometimes life has a way of just lashing it out suddenly without any preparation. Have you maintained a little bit of your character that there will be something left when your identity in a partnership is no longer the case? This question, not only to those, not only in the case of death, but also in separation. Feelings do change, Feelings do change. I think it will be naive for anybody to think that feelings are maintained and that things are always the same. Not really. Sometimes we hang on because we are afraid, but the feeling would have changed. It's not the same. So when it happens, that what was your security? You were X and Y, and everybody knows you as Mr. and Mrs. And you no longer are a person, you've just become part of a Mr. and a Mrs. identity. Should the person elect not to be with you anymore? Should you suddenly find yourself single? Should death happen and you are on your own? Would you be able to reconstruct yourself from being a Mrs. to become a Miss? From married to become divorced or separated or widowed? Have you maintained enough of your character to be able to do that? There are some women, in spite of how happy their relationships are, do work with this consciousness and know that they've got to maintain themselves. They've got to be prepared to stand alone. They've got to be prepared to renegotiate their identity. Yes, they may have been a Mrs. somebody, but they might be a divorced somebody. And some people embrace it, some people deal with it. The ones who are able to deal better with it are the ones who knew this in the first place, the ones who were conscious of this in the first place. Those of us who naively became unconscious, those of us who were drawn into this false security, are the ones who struggle the most. It is very difficult. It is very painful for all the reasons other than not having an identity. But when you add the loss of your identity to all the other difficulties, that is what tips the balance for many, many women. I know women who've gone mad because a relationship has come to an end, because they invested themselves into just that one identity. They cannot imagine themselves being anything else apart from part of a partnership. Their financing is dependent on this relationship. Their identity is dependent on this relationship. Their social standing is dependent on this relationship. They have ceased to exist as an individual. They only exist as part of this partnership. So that when this partnership is taken away for whatever reason, there is nothing left of the woman. Do you see how dangerous this can be? Do you see how dangerous this can be? So when you first see the title, Marriage is Dangerous for Girls, you want to crucify me. You want to kill me. But as I said, I wanted you to put sentiment to one side. And I wanted you to listen. Listen very carefully to the discussion on the table from an intellectual point of view, if you can. For lack of a better word, let's call it from an intellectual point of view. Listening to the arguments being given. And if you are an intellectual, if you've managed to get yourself to that level, some of these points are actually sound. Some of those points are actually sound. You've got to admit that yes, in spite of your initial knee-jerk reaction, in spite of wanting to crucify whoever bore the message, the fact that it aggravates everything you believe, when you actually listen to the submissions, point for point, they do make sense. And so even if you are happily married, all I'm saying this day is that I want you to be conscious of the fact that you can have multiple identities. You should, in fact, have multiple identities. It is an adaptation which will help you survive. It's a survival technique. So that when one identity is no longer working, it's possible to effortlessly flip the cap and replace it with something else and just keep the ball rolling. Yep, I was Mrs. X. No longer Mrs. X. Back down to Miss A. It's fine. That doesn't really rock me much because my identity would have been secure. Mrs. X to Miss A will rock me if I did not have my identity intact. You were a Miss A and then you became a Mrs. X. When you are a Mrs. X, you are actually Miss A and Mrs. X. You've got to remember that bit. Miss A and Mrs. X. All rolled into one package. There are certain dimensions of the Miss A that you need to maintain. And you will have to add new dimensions to the Miss A in your Mrs. X new identity. What stops you from being both? What stops you from being both? And who said that we shouldn't be both? I've always wondered. So my friend and I, we got talking and we're like, who's to blame here? The first instinct is to go for the men. Yeah, it's the men's fault. No, it's not. Really, you can't blame a man. He also needs to be relevant in your life. He needs to have a place in your life. He sees a window of opportunity and he takes it and you let him. Whose fault is it? Whose fault is it? Yeah, he lured me into false securities. Yeah, convenient to blame him. He lured you, but you let yourself. Whose fault is it? Whose fault is it, sister? Yes, the man was controlling, but you enjoyed being controlled. You could have resisted control if you so chose, but you wanted convenience, huh? You wanted convenience. No, you didn't want arguments. You wanted peace. You wanted peace. So you let him. Whose fault? Whose fault is it, sis? Who can you blame here? Is the pot hotter than before? Yeah, when we first started the argument, it was all the man's fault, wasn't it? Yep. He did not let you pay the bills. Really? He tied you to a wall? What? Did he use a nail? Did he use a rope? How did he tie you up so much that you couldn't pay bills? Sis. How did you become so financially dependent because he was giving? Well, if he was guilty of giving, you were also guilty of taking. Yeah. Sure, I told you. It's a smoking hot discussion. It is not convenient for anybody. It's not comfortable for anybody, be it man or woman or whatever kind of relationship you have. When you actually interrogate deeply, you have to find things that you have to work on for yourself. Yeah, you do need to be you. Really. You do need to be us. Really. Otherwise, the relationship doesn't work. You need to be part of an us. But there has to be a you with an S to be an us. Think about that. You were you before. You. Okay, it's the bad spelling of the word, but there we go. Work with me. You. And then you add an S and you get your us. You plus S equals us. Remember that although we say the word us as one unit, sounds monosyllabic, doesn't it? But it's actually made up of two components. Each of those components very valid, each of those components very useful, very necessary in order to construct the dual identity that is an us. It is as simple as that for you, for survival in a relationship. Of course, there has to be a you. And there has to be the duality of the us. And as happy and as good as the us can be, the you has to be part of an us. The you had to be nurtured in the us. The you has to be developed in an us, so that even within the us, the you is more effective. And without the S, the you is still capable of being you, of standing alone. I don't like these ones to be long. I want these ones to be short. I want them to be straight to the point. I want them to be hard-hitting. And I want it to be a reflective experience for you. Regardless of what kind of relationship you have right now, I need you to pause and ask, do you clearly have your individual identity established, maintained, and developed? Have you sustained your competence? Have you? Are you capable of operating solo, just as you are capable of operating effectively as part of a team? Are you? If something dramatic happened and the partner wasn't there tomorrow, what would be your reaction? I know you'd be devastated because you'd have lost something very valuable. That's not what I'm asking. But I'm asking about continuity and survival. Would you be able to keep it all rolling? Would you be able to pick up the ropes? Would you be able to stand tall and show them all? Would you? If the answer is no, then you need to go back to the drawing board and you need to find out why you would not be able to operate on your own. You need to interrogate the reasons why you feel incapable. And you need to pick up the ropes from wherever you left them that would make you feel capable yet again. Sis, it is very important for all parties that we maintain individual competence, even as members of a dual unit. My name is Amma. Amma Manson. Sometimes I entertain you. Most of the time I don't. A lot of the time I make you uncomfortable. Yes, today is one of those occasions. I'm asking you to think. I am not against marriage. I am married actually. I'm pro-marriage. But I am all for survival. I am all for long-term survival, longevity. And in order for longevity to be secured, you will have to think about certain things that are inconvenient. You will have to take care of certain basics that are easy to let go. And once you've dealt with those things, then longevity is secure. Then I'm happy, and my job as your coach, your motivator, your educator is done. Find me on Amma Manson 1 on YouTube. You find me on Facebook too. But this project mainly is hosted from YouTube and from my Transformations Inc. page. So follow all these channels and you'll be able to see the series. You can watch the rest of them in the series from YouTube in that playlist. And use this. See you soon. Thanks for watching. Thanks for sharing. And please invite other people to also ponder and consider, because you might save somebody in the case of an emergency. This simple discussion and the preparation that could result from it is what could determine somebody's survival moving forward when everything falls to the ground. Picking yourself up requires skills, and skilling requires time. It's not something you do in a knee-jerk once disaster has already struck. It is something you do before disaster strikes, so that when it strikes, you already have your contingency plan to go. See you soon. Thanks for watching.